Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Grizzly Bear Sim's YouTube channel, and welcome back to Green River. This is episode number 15, and we're going to get right into the action today. We are going to go ahead and take advantage of the rest of this particular game day. I've been contemplating going ahead and starting in the next game day number 9, and basically doing this work either then or maybe even just doing this last cultivation job off camera and not putting this on camera. But I had some really interesting thing happen to me within the last 24, maybe 48 hours that I kind of wanted to talk about. This is I try to role play a little bit here and there, and done some role play in the last couple of episodes, and kind of want to just share the experiences that I'm obviously going to share with you all. It's quite interesting, and let me just get over here over to the field that we're going to do this work on and get connected to our cultivator, because it's over here on this field. We'll just go ahead and take a cut across here because it doesn't really matter. These are all, this is just the field that we plowed or had course play plow in the previous episode. And I think I've already said that this is episode number 15. And in the real world, I'm recording this episode on the 15th of May. So we are just hours away from being halfway through the month of May. Can you believe it? Or at least that's where I'm sitting, is about halfway through the month of May. Of course, you're watching this episode on when? You're watching this episode on the 29th of May, Tuesday the 29th of May. Let's go ahead and get connected to this, and let's see, how is this field shaped? So I think what we'll do is we'll swing around and start on this side over here. We'll do this side. So let me just kind of drive around in circles here for a moment until I can get lined up here with the field, and I'm going to drop GPS down here momentarily, and that way we can kind of make this a little bit neater. Neatness is always a good thing. If we can make it that way, get locked in and drop it, and probably end up having to put a headland down on the other end of the field, and possibly on this end of the field as well. We certainly do not want to have a repeat of Billy Bob's little accident in the pond, because I guarantee you I would not hear the end of it if I were to put this big Kloss tractor and cultivator in there. So anyway, I really don't know if I've ever shared with you all if I have a varied list of hobbies that I am rather interested in, and I think I've talked about a lot of them. Obviously, you know that I'm into gaming, farm sim, truck sim, flight sim. That's all kind of encompassing of the gaming hobby. Okay. Also in amateur ham radio. Been doing that for a little over 10 years. It was something that I have always been kind of interested in, but sort of struggled with learning CW or Morse code when I was a child, and of course the restrictions and everything have been lifted for Morse code, so that is no longer needed to have that skill to be able to get your license. But anyway, multitude of other hobbies. I've been sort of into metal detecting for periods of time. I suppose that my wife and I have always sort of envisioned finding our retirement nest egg buried someplace or whatever. But another hobby that I do sort of off and on, and that is genealogy. That is tracing my family roots. And I've got to say that it's something that was started by my mom almost 52 years ago. She started tracing the family tree very soon after I was born, sort of for me. She did that on sort of my behalf, I suppose. And so, of course, at that particular point in time, both of my grandparents were still alive. Her mother and father, and my dad's mother and father, and I had some great grandparents still alive, and so she had a lot of information, a lot of people that she could sort of go to and say, hey, tell me Tell me who your parents were, tell me who your grandparents were, tell me who your great-grandparents were, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, back then, and I can remember as a small child, my mom would often drag me to the library. I grew up in rural Texas, but we didn't live that far away from Tyler, Texas, which was the county seat of Smith County, Texas, or Athens, which was the county seat of Henderson County, Texas, or Palestine, which was the county seat of Anderson County, Texas. And of course, I had family members that born and raised and lived all in these particular areas and everything. And so, so really and truthfully, my mom sort of did the family tree and everything. And so a number of years ago, it's probably been about 20, maybe about 15 to 20 years ago, she presented me with a book, a binder, if you will, a big thick notebook, and it was called the family history of Jerry Taylor, from castles to cabins, essentially. And it was interesting because I was having a chat with Eustace Farmer earlier today on Discord, and I was telling him about my family history, and I've been searching for this one particular person, a second great grandmother of mine, on the sort of on the Taylor side, who have not been able to find what happened to her, where she's buried, and all this kind of stuff. Well, this story's not about that. The story's really about something a little bit different. So needless to say, as I was saying, she presented me with this book, and I suppose, as a child growing up, I really didn't have a lot of interest in genealogy. To me, it was a lot of getting hauled around to these libraries and in cemeteries and everything. And trust me, I've probably spent more time as a young lad in a cemetery looking at tombstones and learning how to do the taking a piece of paper and a lead pencil, and basically putting the piece of paper over a tombstone and taking the lead pencil and sort of tracing on the paper to take a sort of a copy of the tombstone, if you will. I learned how to do that when I was, probably 8 or 9 years old. And again, my memories of cemeteries were just very hot places, often, fire ants everywhere, and just kind of a miserable thing. So needless to say, as I'm about to say, and as the point that I'm making, is that genealogy wasn't something that I was really interested in until probably just a few years ago, maybe about 15 years or so ago, after my mom gave me this book, and it sort of put into perspective of who all these people were, and of course she had traced our family back to England and even places beyond that. And as I often joke and sort of say, and I actually told this to Eustace Farmer today, I'm like, my family did not come over on the Mayflower, but they were on like the next boat that sailed out of England. My family was on that. And so we've got our family traced back to the 1600s, colonial America and everything. And so very, very cool. So anyway, I have my family tree on Ancestry.com, and of course I don't pay for my membership continuously. I kind of get in the mood for genealogy, and usually it's during the cold winter months when there's really nothing kind of else to do. And my wife is very helpful because she's a goddess of searching information and analyzing information, analyzing marriage certificates and death certificates and censuses and all that kind of stuff. And if any of you folks are into genealogy, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And if you're not, I apologize. I hope you still enjoy my conversation, and I hope that you enjoy the content that I'm putting out today. And if by some slim chance you're not, I will apologize, and I will make sure that I make it up to you all the very next episode. But in any event, I've had these family trees up on genealogy on Ancestry.com. Well, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, I did the DNA test, the Ancestry DNA test. I think it costs like $100. They send you a kit. You put a saliva sample in this tube, and you send it off to the lab. they analyze it for your DNA, and then they basically put together a report, and you can view that report on Ancestry.com, and it'll sort of tell you where you're from, what your ethnic background and everything is. And I was kind of really interested in that. I had seen a program on the BBC a year or so before that, somebody did something similar to this, and it showed that they had, a little bit of French in them and some English in them, and they had some, maybe even some Vikings, some Nordic influences and whatever. And so I was kind of looking, interested in that, and just saying, well, let me just do this. It's only a little over $100 or whatever. I'll do it. Well, the other thing that it sort of does is it sort of lines you up with other people based on family tree information. So let's say, for example, I've got my second great grandparents listed in Ancestry, and if someone else does a DNA test, and it sort of looks at and it says, okay, well, there's a 99.9% chance that you two individuals are first cousins or second cousins or 4 or 5 fifth cousins or whatever the case is. You guys kind of get what I'm saying here, hopefully. So anyway, I did this, and I would get messages from people that would say, hey, cuz, it looks like we're 5th cousins or 6th cousins or 8th cousins 20 times removed or whatever. And it was kind of like, okay, well, that's cool, but it's not that close of a connection to me to really get me all excited and everything about who they are and where they came from and all that kind of stuff. Well, I got a message just a few days ago from a gentleman who was looking, who basically had done the DNA testing and everything just like I did, and his results came back, and it basically said that he and this character by the name of Jerry, Grizzly Bear Sims, are second cousins. Well, he begins to tell me his story. His story is quite interesting and quite sad at the same time. He basically was adopted. He was given up for adoption by his birth mother, and his birth mother happens to be a family member of mine, not directly. I think she would be like maybe a second cousin or something. So anyway, and the story more or less goes like this: that his birth mother was separated for a period of time from her husband, and I guess during this period of time, and this was back in the late 50s, around 57 or so. He was born in 58. They were separated for a brief period of time, and while they were separated, she had relations with another man, but then shortly after that, she and her husband reconciled their differences and essentially got back together. But the stork came, and she found out she was pregnant, and she did not know who the father of the child was. So the father happened to have blonde hair. Her husband happened to have blonde hair. Her other 3 kids all had blonde hair. So she decided that if the child that she was pregnant with was born with blonde hair, then she would keep the child, because 99.9% chance that child would be from her husband. So everything would be okay. If the child did not have blonde hair, or had dark hair, I should say, the assumption was that it was not her husband's child, and she would put the child up for adoption. Well, long story short, or kind of a long story short, because I'm not done with the story completely, but the child was born with dark hair, so she put the child up for adoption. Now, he was born, or he believes he was born in Mississippi. His adoptive mother and father, who he grew up thinking was his real parents, moved to Texas, and he grew up probably 30 or 40 miles away from where I grew up. And by the way, where I grew up was the old stomping grounds of pretty much my family for the last 100 and something years. So it was the area, the locale where his birth mother also grew up, went to school, and everything. So I get this message sent to me through Ancestry that just basically says, "Hi, my name is so-and-so, and according to the DNA results, we're supposed to be second cousins." He says, "I am adopted," and he says, "I am looking for my birth family." And he assured me, he's like, "Look, I'm not seeking anything from them. I don't want any sort of compensation or any sort of things like that. He just kind of wants to know." He's 59 years old, so he's about 7 years older than I am. He just wants to know. So he had, because of the way that what he could see from the family trees was, he was kind of zeroing in on my great grandparents, because we share that as a common family member, and he was zeroing in on their sibling, or their children, I should say, not their siblings, but their children. And so he was thinking, okay, well, based on this information, I think that my parents, or my birth mother, came from one of these sets of people. Okay, well, now these people are of the generation of my grandparents. Okay, so we share a great grandparent, but obviously we don't share the same grandparent. Well, he knew who my grandparents were, and he knew who my grandfather's siblings were. Okay, hopefully I haven't lost you. So he listed all this out. Well, I'm like, okay. So I'm pretty confident that my grandmother and grandfather, in other words, the parents of my mother and my uncle, only had my mother and my uncle. There were a few other of my grandfather's siblings who did not have any children at all. And we knew that pretty confident. My mom was pretty confident that was the case, that they had no children, so they could not be the parents or the birth mother of this particular individual. And so it sort of nailed it down to one other person. And the guy had some information. He had enough information that he had been given through the years. And again, keep in mind, he's 59 years old. His birth mother is actually still alive. I don't have any contact with her, but my mom has a little bit of contact with her. Not much, maybe once a year, a message or something, a letter, or I think they communicate through Facebook now, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, that's a different story for a different conversation probably. But anyway, what I was saying is that he had enough information that he had been passed down to pretty much indicate that this was his birth mother. And so I talked to my mom a couple of times, and we really didn't want to get involved because this is one of those situations where you have no idea what people know and what people have been told and all this kind of stuff. But the guy was able to piece enough information together that I was at least able to steer him in the direction that he shouldn't be looking. In other words, my grandparents, they only had 2 children, my mom and my uncle, and a couple of the other brothers and sisters of my grandfather who we knew had no children. And so that kind of narrowed the field down just a little bit. Well, long story short, again, I just spoke to the guy on the phone just a few minutes ago. And it's so funny because it's not really funny. It's actually a very sad story in a way. But it's interesting because he grew up about 35 miles or so from the heart of where His great-grandmother lived. His grandmother lived, you know, again, I'm 7 years younger than he is, and I remember them, you know. So I mean, he's missed out on these individuals as far as being family members and everything. Clearly, he's missed out on his birth mother and his three siblings through his birth mother. And so now the situation is this: he's sort of in a dilemma. He's got some information. He kind of knows who his birth mother is. He knows who his birth siblings, his blood siblings and everything are. But of course, he's not going to make contact with them because he does not know if they know anything. He doesn't, you know, he feels, you know, I guess, kind enough towards his birth mother that he does not want to upset the apple cart too badly. She's probably 75 or maybe pushing close to 80 years old. And so, you know, he's got a dilemma in front of him. Does he reach out to her? Does he try to make contact with her, or does he just sort of let sleeping dogs lie, if you will? So I, of course, can't really advise him because, you know, it's not my place to. My mom really doesn't want to get too involved because she doesn't have a whole lot of contact with his birth mother to begin with, and certainly she had no clue that all of this transpired and everything back then, 58, 57, 59, something like that. So it's just kind of an interesting story, and there's, you know, the silver lining in all this, I suppose, is that, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn or anything, but, you know, I have been able to help someone at least narrow some things down and sort of get a little bit better understanding of who his birth mother is. And he's now got to make the decision as to whether or not he makes contact with her or just what. And so if I find anything out, I'll be certain to let you know. I'll pass along the information if you're curious to know. But I guess, and I told my wife just a few minutes ago, I'm like, well, I got to go downstairs and do some farm sim or truck sim or flight sim or something, because for the last 36 hours or so, I've been sort of, you know, messaging this guy. I've talked to him on the phone twice tonight, and a few things, and I kind of need to unwind a little bit because I'm, you know, he broke down twice on the phone crying with me because he's literally in 59 years of his life, he has, you know, he's inches away from, you know, basically knowing who his birth mother is, and again, he doesn't want to cause anybody any pain. He doesn't want to upset anybody. He certainly doesn't, you know, he doesn't really know, and I don't either. I don't know what sort of health his birth mother is in. It's just kind of a little bit of an interesting situation, and you know, I wish him the very best of luck. I do feel for him. I feel somewhat sorry for him that he's in this situation. And you know, again, I mean, people do things for different reasons, and you know, I don't know all the circumstances behind their separation back in the 57, 58 time frame. Neither does my mom, by the way. So yeah, it's just an interesting story, and you know, I guess people, and what I've surmised of this whole thing is that, you know, here's this woman who gave up this child, right or wrong, and I'm not going to argue the right or wrong levels of this. Clearly it's wrong, but that's what I feel. But, you know, you don't know what the circumstances and all this kind of stuff are, so I'm not going to judge. But you've got this woman who essentially gave up this child 58, 59 years ago. Now, she had no idea at the time, in 1958, she had no idea at the time that 58, or well, less than that, 50 years later, one could do a DNA test through Ancestry.com, pay $100, do a DNA test, get matched up with all of these potential family members, or would have no idea back in 1958 that one would have access to the internet that has practically tons of information, pretty much anything that's ever been put out there, including pictures and all sorts of information is out there. So, I'm trying to be sensitive in my thoughts to her position, in thinking that, for the last 58 years, she's thought that, I hate to say it this way, but that her secret was safe in this situation. And so he's got quite the again, he's got quite the sort of the dilemma to understand. And of course, I'm not making light of any of this. I'm sure that I'm sure throughout all of my viewers and subscribers and everything, I most likely have viewers and subscribers that are adopted and everything. And I think that the adoption process is such a great, wonderful thing, especially considering the alternative. And that's always where my thoughts are going to be and everything. And people have to make hard decisions, and there's you can't judge that. You can't. I'm not going to judge his birth mother. I'm not going to judge her husband or anything of that nature and whatnot. Just try to understand that here's this guy that has been searching. He's been searching for such a long time and has come more or less within the last 36 hours or so face to face with almost the truth. And like I said, he's just trying to put all this together and determine what is he going to do about it. What is he going to do? So here again, I have been setting up here talking, and I have failed to take a screenshot. So I'm going to do that really quick and just kind of pretend like I'm just continuing to cultivate here, because otherwise I'll have to drive all the way back over here and set this up. So bear with me for just one moment. Okay, so there we go. All right, so everything, all of our fields are opened up. We've got everything plowed. 28 and 27 were the last two fields. They've been plowed. They've been first level of fertilization has been put down on these fields, and they have also been cultivated. And we're at 46 degrees, so we are just literally 4 degrees away from the magic number of 50, the big 50, the big 50, of getting that soil temperature up to 50 degrees for our soybeans. And that will arrive when it arrives. We don't know when that will be, but it'll get here when it gets here. And we'll obviously take the opportunity to put our soybeans in the ground at that particular point in time. So now what I'm going to do, if you might remember from the very early episodes of GreenRiver, I sort of laid out the general plan, the general idea, concept of sort of these two farms, these two equipment staging areas and everything, and how we were going to use them. And so I've already carried the plow over. And so essentially I'm going to now carry the cultivator over, because at least for now, we don't need the cultivator anymore until fall. If at some point we decide to prep fields, if we get an opportunity to double plant, if we do, we will. If we don't, we won't, obviously. But I suppose there could be a sheer bit of luck that we could have the opportunity to double plant these fields, or at least the wheat fields. And if we can do that, again, like I said, we will do it. But as for right now, for the foreseeable future, I don't foresee that we will need the cultivator again until for some time, if at all. So I have been in the process of just moving some of this equipment back over here to this complex, So I've got our plow over here. I'm going to just whip in here really quick and see if we can get the hose to reach. It might not. I don't know for sure. Sometimes it does. Let's see if it will. We stretch it as far as we can. Yeah, we can make it reach. So obviously we can't get it around on the other side, but you know what? We don't have to. The game will still give us credit for a clean piece of equipment by just basically holding the sprayer in one position for a little while. I know that's not real immersion, but hey, just work with me on this. We'll go ahead and hose off the big cloths as well, because guess what? We're kind of done with it as well. I don't think we really need it for anything else right now. And we'll go ahead and cut our sprayer off, and then we're going to go and park the cultivator, the Lumpkin cultivator, where it needs to go, and put it away. And then it'll be time to call it quits for this episode, for episode number 15. And again, hard to believe that we're this far into this series, and we're 15 episodes into the series, and we haven't even, we're not even finished with planting yet. We've still got 2 more fields to plant, considering that we got Tazewell County wrapped up in 24 episodes, and Midtown USA wrapped up in 30 episodes. I'm really enjoying the pace. I'm really enjoying the pace that I'm playing this map. I don't feel I'm rushed. I know that at the end of the day, it might mean that we may duplicate some stuff here and there. We've probably done a couple of sessions of cultivating, probably 1 or 2 of plowing. We're now going to be getting into, obviously we've got 2 more fields to seed, and obviously then at that point we still have all of our fields that we have to apply a 3rd level of fertilization, because we want the maximum yield from our crops. If we're going to do it, we might as well do it right and everything. And so that's what we're going to be doing with regards to that. And then of course in the summer months, while we're waiting for the county to come put that sign back up that I just knocked over. But typically, what I was wanting to say is, while we're waiting for this field here, which is wheat, and we've got one other wheat field, obviously we need to wait for that to come to fruition for harvest. We're going to be doing some of our industry stuff. We're going to be doing some trees. We're going to be doing some more compost. We may, obviously we'll do bark through the compost. We may see if we can find some old hay, some old straw, something like that. If we can buy that for the right price and put it through the compost plant, that's going to earn us a pretty good payday right there. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I will apologize because it was kind of an episode about the whole genealogy thing, and I try not to spend an entire 30 minutes talking about the same subject, but I was just maybe I needed to get a little bit off my chest, and I consider this channel sort of an avenue to talk about anything I want to talk about, obviously within reason. And I know many of you, because I get your comments, I see your comments, a lot of you appreciate the fact that I do talk about a variety of things that happen in my life, things that make me happy, things that make me sad, things that, make me mad or whatever. And so, I don't know, I'm really sad for this individual, but I'm happy for this individual that I've been able to help him with this, and what he chooses to do next is obviously going to be up to him. But hey, I found out I had a brand new second cousin that I had no knowledge about whatsoever. So, I consider that a pretty good day in my book. Thank you for watching. God bless each and every one of you. And I certainly, if you are a praying kind of type of person, I don't really ask for folks to pray on behalf of me. But if you don't mind, and if you are a praying kind of person, perhaps mention to the man upstairs that to give comfort to my second cousin and to his birth mom, and whatever decision he decides to make, because obviously he holds the keys, he has to take the next step. And whether he doesn't take that step and he continues just knowing what he knows and feeling okay about that, or if he does choose to make contact, that that contact is considered to be peaceful, certainly not upsetting to anyone, and that they can reconcile their differences and everything, and find peace in that whole situation. I would really, really appreciate that. Thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. Well, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, thank you for watching this episode of Green River. Take good care of yourself and also of each other, and I'll talk to you very soon. Bye-bye for now.